Okay, everybody, we are starting Unit 4C, which is all about the revolutions of Latin America. And you're going to start by looking at two different maps. And there's some critical places that I want you to kind of keep in mind. So we've got Mexico, Colombia is in the blue, we've got Peru, Chile is this long, skinny country down here. And then we've got Brazil, or the Empire of Brazil. We've got Upper Peru in this red area, red and blue. And then if you look over at this map, you notice some people that we've talked about a while ago, some Enlightenment thinkers. So you've got John Locke's ideas, Thomas Paine, you've got Voltaire's ideas coming to South America, you've got Rousseau's ideas coming, you've even got some ideas from Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, kind of all inspiring some of these revolutions that we're about to read about in South America. So before we start talking about revolutions, we need to talk a little bit about the background. So the first page says the global spread of democratic ideas and nationalist movements occurred during the 19th century. The effects of the revolutions in America and France could be felt internationally. The Haitian, Mexican, South American revolutions were inspired by the Enlightenment, the American Revolution, the spread of nationalism, and the revolutions in Europe. I would most definitely highlight, underline, star this information. The ideas of liberty and equality inspired independence throughout Latin America. We go down a little bit. We're going to see something very familiar to us. There's a social hierarchy or the social classes of the Spanish colonies. So, get my fireworks back. Similar to the French Revolution, social class struggles and discontent, played a large role in the Latin American independence movements. The Peninsulares, or the wealthy Spanish-born citizens, were the smallest percentage, so they're up here at the top. They were the most powerful group, and they could hold the political offices. So here's the most powerful group. And then we go down to the Creoles, and they're the Spaniards born in Latin America. They could not hold any political office, but they could be military officers. So here's a lot of our military leaders. Then we go down, and it says they were often jealous of the status of the Peninsulares held. Together, these two classes possessed the wealth and power and the land in Latin America. So we've got a lot of jealousy between these top two groups and the rest of the groups we're about to talk about. So right under that, you have the mestizos, which is a mixture of European and native ancestry. Then you've got the mulattoes, which are a mixture of European and African ancestry. And then we've got the slave class at the bottom. Having been educated in Europe and exposed to the Enlightenment and revolutionary ideas, Creoles led the majority of the independence movement throughout the rest of Latin America. So you've got this group right here that's going to kind of change history in Latin America. As these ideals spread in Latin America, many mestizos and other lower classes were inspired by the ideas of equality and freedom. So now you've got this group fighting for revolution, for change, which is going to inspire the next group right under them to want changes too. Now we're going to get into some of the graphic organizer. So what you're going to do is read on the passage on the left or follow along as I read. We're going to write where the revolution happened, where this leader is from, and then we're going to look for 4 characteristics about him that are important. So first person we're going to read about is Toussaint Louverture. And he happened in Haiti, and Haiti makes up the western third portion of the island of Hispaniola. The Haitian Revolution was inspired by the American Revolution. It was also the first successful slave revolt. This French colony, which was known as Saint Domingo French or Santo Domingo, prior to its independence, had a large slave population, most of whom were treated brutally and lived in poor conditions. So we know Haiti is where this would happen. So that would be what I would write right here. If we keep reading, it says in 1791, A group of 100,000 slaves revolted, and Toussaint Louverture, a former slave, soon became their leader. By 1801, Louverture had gained control of the island and freed all of the enslaved African Americans. In 1802, France sent troops to deal with the situation and remove Louverture from power. Louverture was captured and sent to prison in France, where he died in 1803, but the French were still unsuccessful in stopping the rebellion. In 1804, Haiti declared its independence, thus making it the only successful slave revolt in history. So you've got a few different facts you could write here. I think you could absolutely say that he led a group of 100,000 slaves to revolt. You could write about how in 1801 he gained control over the island and was able to free all of the enslaved African Americans. He was captured and sent to prison in France, where he died. And I think probably the thing that makes him so interesting to me is in 1804, when Haiti was able to declare its independence, it was the still only successful slave revolt in history. And I'm very excited to tell you, if you don't know already, we are going to do a DVQ next week talking more about him. The next person we're going to talk about is Padre Miguel Hidalgo. In Mexico, the independence movement was initially led by the mestizos, Padre Miguel y Castillo Hidalgo, Father Miguel Hidalgo, inspired by the Enlightenment ideas, called for a rebellion, and a crowd marched toward Mexico City. They were defeated in 1811 by the upper classes, who feared losing their power to the lower classes. Another attempt at revolt 4 years later also failed. Mexican independence finally was attained in 1821, when Mexican Creoles feared the loss of their power and declared independence from Spain. Agustin de Iturbide became the Emperor of Mexico. In 1823, the nations of Central America, including Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Costa Rica, declared their independence from Mexico. So right here, in this column for where, we're going to put Mexico. And then we need 4 characteristics or facts. So I would absolutely say he was inspired. Inspired by Enlightenment ideas. That would be my first one. I would absolutely think about he led a rebellion that marched toward Mexico City. Mexico finally was able to gain their independence. I would probably just say this part, in 1821. And then you could talk about how they ultimately, with Augustine, were able to be free when he became emperor, which inspired other places to declare their independence from Mexico, as this one. You guys are absolutely free to make other facts and choices, but those are the ones that I would probably choose. And the next 2 people we kind of combined. So it says the revolutionary spirit was contagious in South America. Simón Bolívar was a Creole general who led the independent movements throughout South America, beginning in his home country in 1811. Bolívar then moved into Colombia and Ecuador, where he met José de San Martin, who had recently freed Chile. So we've got Simón Bolívar, who led movements throughout South America. He moved into Colombia and Ecuador, which would be right here in this box. And then what he was able to do is he is able to kind of start independence movements through South America, which is what I would write right here. Together, the 2 men combined forces under Bolivar's command to liberate or free Peru. Bolivar's dream was to unite the Spanish colonies of South America into a single country known as Gran Colombia. Was a reality for a short time as Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, and Ecuador were temporarily united. but political issues soon separated these countries once again into their own independent states. So I would absolutely think right here that you would mention Peru for Jose San Martin, de San Martin. And I think one thing you could write right here was that their dream was to unite all of the South American countries into a single country known as Gran Colombia. And we are actually going to do a little more research for some of these leaders with tomorrow's activity.